As House Democrats prepare to present articles of impeachment against the president, questions remain about whether Vice President Mike Pence will first move to invoke the 25th Amendment. We are told the president and Mr. Pence have barely spoken since the assault on the Capitol last week. The president, unable to communicate on Twitter and other social media platforms, has remained muted and isolated. This, as lawmakers continue to demand answers from the Justice Department, including what they are doing to investigate and prosecute those involved in Wednesday's deadly attacks. For more on this, let's bring in CBS News White House correspondent Paula Reid. Paula, thanks for standing by. Let's get to the first bit of information that broke this morning. Melania Trump making her first comments today about the violence. In a lengthy statement, the First Lady condemned the violence, but she also seemed to point to herself as a victim in so many words. What else did she have to say?
There's a lot going on in this statement, Vlad. As you noted, it's pretty lengthy. It is 2 full pages, and it comes 5 days after the deadly and unprecedented attack on the U.S. Capitol. And in this statement, she expresses her condolences, of course, for the families of the officers who have died following the riots. But she also expresses her sympathy for the families of rioters who were killed, including the woman who was shot by police after storming the Capitol. She says she absolutely condemns the violence. She calls it unacceptable. She also uses language. She says, I am disappointed and disheartened with what happened last week. And it's language like that that's really coming under some scrutiny, sort of the type of thing you'd say if your favorite program wasn't on or if your favorite sports team loses. It doesn't really seem to capture the mood of the country. And there does appear to be a little bit of both sides here within this statement, and also, of course, referring to herself as a victim, which is, again, not necessarily the tone you want to strike.
Yeah, that she doesn't specifically say what that was about. It most likely came as a result of reports that indicated that while this was happening at the Capitol building, while they were rioting there, she was arranging porcelain for a photo shoot for a coffee table book. She says that is gossip and that's part of how she felt that she was a victim in all of this. President Trump is facing the prospect of becoming the first president to be impeached twice. With pressure mounting, the president's reportedly telling aides once again that he wants to pardon himself. In her interview with 60 Minutes on Sunday, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi weighed in on that idea. Let us listen.
What if he pardons himself?
What if he pardons these people who are terrorists on the Capitol?
Or pardons himself?
He can only pardon himself from federal offenses. He cannot pardon himself from state offenses, and that's where he's being investigated in the state of New York.
There is a possibility that after all of this, there's no punishment, no consequence, and he could run again for president.
And that's one of the motivations that people have for advocating for impeachment.
So as the Speaker points out, he could only pardon himself for federal offenses, but can he pardon himself?
Anne-Marie, this is such a good legal question, and it's one that we have been tossing around as journalists. I've been talking with my sources for months and months. And like we are so often here at the Trump White House, we're really just in uncharted territory. Intelligent minds and legal experts mostly come down on the side of arguing that no, he cannot pardon himself. They rely actually on a Justice Department memo from the 70s that specifically says you would be violating the principle that no one can be both the judge, be the judge or the jury in their own case. Of course, that was a 1974 memo that came about during the Nixon presidency. The other issue is if he pardons himself, it doesn't really mean anything until there is actually a federal case that he would have to defend himself against. So that would mean that the Biden administration would need to make a conscious decision to pursue some kind of federal charges. Now, the fact that there are already state investigations, potential state cases, makes that even less likely. But it seems like something he could try, but it really doesn't become relevant or that wouldn't be decided or assessed until there was actually a federal case against him that the Biden administration wanted to bring. The first question that would go right up to the Supreme Court is, can he pardon himself from this? Can we even bring this? And it just appears that it's unlikely he can, but we are totally in uncharted territory here.
So, Paula, as you know, before moving forward with impeachment, the House will first formally call on Vice President Mike Pence to invoke the 25th Amendment It's worth noting, as you have and others, that the president and the vice president reportedly haven't spoken since last week's assault on the Capitol, and the tension between the two men continues to build. Is there any indication which way Pence will go? I thought it was striking that the House Speaker yesterday in that interview with 60 Minutes said when they tried to call the vice president's office, he never came to the phone.
Well, that's one way to answer a question, right? Don't even come to the phone. Let the staffers do it. Yeah, he has 9 or 10 more days, depending on how you're counting, to not come to the phone to answer that very serious question. But if we look at how Mike Pence has behaved throughout the Trump administration, through the other impeachment, through the coronavirus pandemic, so many controversies, so many contentious moments, the vice president has always been one of the president's most ardent supporters. He has been in lockstep with the president when the president, either through his actions, his policy, his rhetoric, really just got himself in hot water. The vice president was always the one who came out, tried to wrap it, tried to do a little statecraft, a little more careful language, and always was by the president's side. So the idea that he would continue to pursue the 25th Amendment or support that, it seems very unlikely. Again, there's just a short period of time left here in the White House, but that's plenty of time for events to potentially change his mind. But based on his previous conduct, how loyal he's been, the short amount of time, that is unlikely. It is much more likely that he will defer to lawmakers if they want to pursue impeachment proceedings. That seems like more likely recourse than the vice president getting behind anything having to do with the 25th Amendment.
Trump campaign advisor Jason Miller tells CBS News that we will probably be hearing from the president. We know he has plans to head down to the border wall to survey its progress tomorrow. Do we know what the president will be speaking about, what he'll address?
We expect that he is going to try today and tomorrow to change the conversation. Now, look, that's unlikely to be successful, but he is going to try to turn things, we are told, back to the normal course of business. That trip to the southern border is likely going to be an effort to highlight the administration's immigration policies, the promises he ran on, the promises he was able to keep, and any success they've had in constructing a border wall. Now, today, we also expect the president to give remarks. He is expected, we are told, to focus on big tech, this argument about being censored by private technology companies when he violates their terms of use. He is also expected today to bestow the Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor, on Congressman Jim Jordan. Now, that's especially notable because we haven't heard very much from the president about the events that transpired last Wednesday. And Jordan was, of course, one of the handful of lawmakers who opposed the Electoral College results even after that deadly attack on the Capitol. So the fact that he is now getting the highest civilian honor, that sends probably a louder message than anything the president could have tweeted.
All right, Paula, thank you so much.